Okay, should we go live?
Yep, we're live.
Diolch yn fawr, croeso gynnes iawn i'r bwrdd heddiw. Mae'n dydd brysur. So good morning everybody. It's going to be a busy day. Welcome to today's board. I've got one apology for absence, and that's from John Hiltout. Otherwise, we're all here. Are there any interests to be declared that are not already declared? Thank you very much. I'll move on to agenda item 1.4, please, the draft minutes of the board meeting held on the 10th of June. So we'll go through, first of all, as is usual, for accuracy. So stop me if you do have issues. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. You content with the accuracy? Oh, David?
Sorry, Chair, just to confirm, with regards to the declaration of interest, there is one with regarding to the Chair's action relating to the university contracts.
Yeah, I'll bring that up when
Thank you.
I'll bring that up specifically. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay, thank you.
Are you okay with the accuracy?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to jump into the action log. There's one action here, David, for September, and that's arrangements for holding the board and committee meetings virtually, and we've extended that, so we'll have to review that in September. I hope we can positively review that. I don't think there are any actions that are not left completed. Am I right? Okay, we go back now to the board minutes. And so this is about matters arising that are not covered by today's agenda and have not been covered by the action log. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, and page 6. So are you happy that that's for me to sign these minutes off?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm now going to go on to agenda item 2.1, which is the chair's report. It's there for what it is to read. I think how different things are compared with before is before the pandemic is an emerging theme. On the front end of health and social care services are all those needs and issues that have been during the COVID pandemic were left in different places. So the pressure and the work on the front end of service delivery is full on. We're also dealing with completing the immunization programs, and we're also dealing with looking at this third wave, specifically around the Delta variant. But I hope very much we're all taking time to have a break. In terms of our organization, HEIW, Alex and I have met with the new ministers, the health minister and the deputy minister. And I think we're very clear, or I think we've made it clear about HEIW's role in supporting the development and training of a workforce for now, but also into the future. And I think the importance of the way that we look after staff well-being, and that we lead through compassionate leadership. I think those messages have been delivered, and I think the work we're doing in developing the leadership of the NHS, I think, is really important. And today we've got our annual general meeting, and the attendees that have signed up to come, that just demonstrates the breadth of partnership and the breadth of the interaction that our organisation has with not just the component parts of the NHS here in Wales, but with the education sector, with the population in general, and with students and trainees. So I think it's really important that we use this afternoon to not just look back, but look forward into the parts that we will play. We've got a real partnership building with Social Care Wales, and of course, the health and social care workforce and their training is at the heart of everything we do. I'm very grateful to my independent board member colleagues. I've just completed the round of mid-year reviews, and the passion and commitment from everyone is plain to see. We had a joyous staff meeting again, and you know, we got into the digital, we got into the culture, but we were also treated to an insight from Steve Moore about what it's like to lead during the front of the NHS during you know, the pandemic. I don't know about the rest of the board members, but I found it humbling and quietly impressive. And I think we're all very grateful for that session. The other thing I have to mention is our clinical leadership fellows. It was a real treat to listen to what they had achieved during this last year, an extraordinary year, you know, done virtually, but every one of them participating and contributing to the pandemic effort, but also to the long term. We went the discussions about their experience and what it had meant to them. I also reflect on those people that had been mentoring and supporting them during that year. The breadth of professions now is growing that come up to put fellows forward, and it's, you know, I really look forward, and I recommend that, you know, the next year they're not going to be able to do it all in one day. You know, it looks as if we're going to have far more fellows than we had before. We usually have 8, and I just think that's a really interesting and hopeful thing, that people are stepping up to that plate and want to do that. Finally, I have to say that some of the challenges about coming back into the workplace, I don't think anybody's really been away from the workplace, in that the work has continued, and it's continued a lot, but actually coming back and meeting each other, I think it's a hopeful thing, and I think we need to do it well. And I look forward to how we work together, how we successfully come back more into the workplace as a physical place, but not lose some of the advantages that we've had through being more inclusive and more national by being available through technologies. So for me, it's been a busy month. I would say that everybody needs to charge their batteries now when they can. And I look forward to a very busy very interesting and a very committed next 6 months. So, you know, make use of the sun. That's my advice to you. Make use of the sun, get some fresh air, and I think it's going to be interesting. So that's it from me. I need to bring to your attention some chair's actions that were taken. The first one is the phase 1 of the strategic review of health professional education. Now, I need to make sure that we're very clear about declarations of interest here from people with interest in the universities. So can I just ask for those interests to be declared here now specifically? So do you want to go first, Eifion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I sit on the Finance Committee of Swansea University, but for the last 3 or 4 months, I have had no communication or contact with Swansea University during the assessment and award of the contracts arising from this tender.
Thank you, Eifion. Push.
Thank you, Chair. I hold an honorary chair in Swansea University Medical School. Having said that, I have had no communications of any sort in relation to this, in relation to that title.
Thank you, Push. Ruth? You're on mute, Ruth.
Right. In my role, the chair of the advisory board to the Centre for Public Policy, which is hosted by Cardiff University. I have a connection with Cardiff University, but I have not had any active role in that for over recent months.
Thank you. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Associate Professor for Primary Care in Swansea University, and I'm active in that role, but I've not been involved directly with the commissioning process for HEIW.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. So at the closed board meeting on the 27th of May.
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
It's Tina. I'm a fellow of the University of South Wales, and I've had no contact, and a member of Cardiff University alumni. Thanks.
Thanks, Tina. I missed your hand, sorry. Okay. Is there anyone else? I don't think so. Okay, so at the closed board meeting on the 27th of May, where the evaluation of tenders for phase 1 of the strategic review of health professional education was considered, it was agreed to avoid delay in the contract process, that a chair's action be taken to approve the successful bidders. It was further agreed that on this occasion, chair's action would involve consultation with all the independent board members, which I duly did. So chair's action was taken on the 25th of June to confirm the new education contracts relating to phase 1 of the strategic review of education be awarded based on the successful bids that resulted from the procurement and evaluation processes. The successful bids detailed in Appendix 1 of the Chief Exec's report of the July board, and in accordance with the decision of the May board's action was undertaken by the Chair and Deputy Chief Executive after first consulting with all independent members. So I'm asking you to approve that Chair's action.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Now, on the second Chair's action I've undertaken was the HEIW functions and the Office of the Chief Digital Officer. The Chair's action was taken on the 29th of June for the board to support HEIW's function to be amended so that it may host the OCDO. In accordance with HEIW standing orders, Chair's action was undertaken by myself and the Chief Exec after first consulting with 2 independent board members. And at this time of writing, we are still awaiting confirmation from Welsh Government of the amendment of HEIW's functions. I'm asking you to approve that Chair's action.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of my report. I now move on to Chief Exec's report, agenda item 2.2.
Thanks, Chair. I will not labour any of the points I put in my report, other than to reaffirm what you've already talked about in terms of the NHS context at the moment. So earlier on in the week, we had an NHS executive board and obviously focused on some of the current pressures. So the good news is that community prevalence is once again on the decrease in terms of coronavirus rates. And so there is discussion, I think both in Wales and nationally, that perhaps the third wave is now starting to flatten out and that we're through some of the worst of that. And obviously in parallel with that, the vaccination programme continues to push on very effectively. So there is a positive context in that sense. However, the NHS is under extreme pressure, and that's a combination of having some COVID patients still in the system and the restrictions and requirements that puts on the NHS in terms of service delivery, the backlog of cases that we can see in all aspects of services, right from primary care through planned care, urgent care and mental health services. And also obviously staff fatigue and staff sickness and the requirement for people to isolate when they've been in contact and are contacted by track, test and protect. So there are a number of reasons why the NHS is under extreme pressure at the moment, and conversation was along the lines that it feels very much like the winter time. It feels very much like the first couple of weeks in January. And I think, you know, for me, just going back to what the chairman said about having Steve Moore come to our staff conference, it is a salutary reminder of the fact that we are part of that wider system. And, you know, I have the advantage and the privilege of being part of those discussions, and I know some of my director colleagues also do. But we do need to make sure that we find ways of making those connections across the organisation. And I am hopeful that as we see some of the restrictions decrease, we can connect people up more effectively with our colleagues in other NHS organisations and frontline services, because I think that just reinforces the importance of the work that we have to do to support that system from, you know, I think the really sort of great position of being in health, education and improvement Wales. So that was all I wanted to say by way of introduction, but I am happy to take any questions on the rest of the report. Some of items obviously will come up later on the agenda.
Any specific questions for Alex or comments? No. Okay. Thank you, Alex.
Can I just make, Chris got my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
It's just it's a point. I can raise it later. But in your report, Alex, which is really helpful, thank you. There is a section on agile working. There's also separately a section on the decarbonisation and the climate change requirements. But I'm just wondering whether we've made a link between the two. It isn't actually mentioned in the agile working, but it's an opportunity to be contributing. So it's just to make that point.
Yeah, absolutely, Ruth. Obviously what you've got there is just a paragraph summarising the position, but a much more comprehensive statement has been issued to staff. And what we're conscious of is that Welsh Government have set a minimum target of 30% remote working for organisations as part of the contribution towards some of those wider environmental targets. So we're well in excess of that in terms of the approach that we're taking through our agile working policy.
I think it would be useful to make the link within, when we talk about agile working and the opportunities raised around transport and so on there, to make that point would perhaps be a useful thing to do.
Yeah, and I think in our more comprehensive statement we have.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Right, I'll move on then. So we've got agenda item 3.1, Annual Education and Training Plan, 2022-23. Is this you, Lisa?
Ie, diolch Cadeirydd a bore da pawb. Pleser bore yma i gyflwyno cynllun addysg a hyfforddiant addysg a gwella iechyd Cymru am y blwyddyn 2022 i 2023. It's a pleasure this morning and welcome everybody to sort of present HEIW's Education and Training Plan for the year 2022 to 23. The report that is ahead of you, I'm actually taking it that the people will have read it, but this is a statutory responsibility of HEIW, and it builds on the workforce strategy for health and social care Wales, and indeed at HEIW's annual plan for 2021. It needs actually to remember that they're obviously developing a safe and quality workforce for the NHS is a key responsibility of ours, and as a result of that, actually we will be delivering better services actually to our patients. This is a plan that we've developed actually across Wales to ensure that actually all that care is delivered safely, and that we actually look after that workforce as well. This plan takes into account actually all the aspects as previously actually mentioned about COVID, and also actually the rest and recovery of services that we are currently actually encountering as part of the NHS. It also actually takes into account the provision of the education that we undertook actually with the strategic review, which was mentioned previously, and also actually takes into account actually the real need to look at the quality of the learning and service environments that we've currently got. I think the challenges that we've got is actually that we can deliver an education and training plan on the basis that we have the infrastructure across the NHS in order to be able to support and actually develop these individuals. These are learners actually who we actually want to work in the NHS in the future, and obviously actually take forward actually and deliver that good quality care. This is an aspect actually that's key actually to the development of any actually education and training, and you will actually see within this plan the investment that we've made actually in terms of developing placements. They are a risk and a challenge to us as well, but it's an exciting opportunity. And what I would say is it's the quality of the learning environment that actually brings about actually a quality learner and a quality workforce and a quality care and safe practice. And we've actually got to do this not only actually to create this for the learner, but when we do actually develop education and training opportunities, we need to actually take into account our current workforce and the current service provision. In other words, actually, we need to prepare and to work with our service colleagues to accommodate the new ways of working in order that they actually embrace it and take forward actually these new initiatives. And as well as that, we've actually seen actually over the last year changes actually in the profession regulation standards for a number of the professions. We are heavily engaged actually in those discussions, and obviously these will be a feature of all our education and training plans going forward. So that's actually basically actually an impact of actually what we are doing. But what I would like to do is to thank everybody who's contributed actually to this plan. This is actually obviously all actually the service people actually in partnership actually with us, but also the stakeholders, and as well as that, the HEIW staff. This has been actually a considerable amount of work to listen, to learn, to innovate, and to improve actually what we've currently got. And as ever, actually, we will actually learn lessons about this as well. So we are actually going to embark on a lessons learned of how did we do this actually plan? What were the lessons that we can actually really celebrate? And how can we do things a bit differently and actually sort of more effectively going forward? It's a continuous learning process, but hopefully as a result of this, you will actually note the current position with regard to what we are highlighting into our plan, and support the submission of this plan to the Welsh Government. You will actually see actually in this actually report that there are key issues where we've increased the education commissions going forward, not everywhere, because as we mentioned before, COVID has had an impact on the ability of not only the service, but higher education as well to deliver the programme as we actually saw fit last year. We've taken that into account, but we have actually increased numbers in certain arenas, but also we've consolidated and maintained the commissions in a number of areas as well. And underpinning that, we've actually seen a massive change in the opportunities actually for clinical placements. The clinical placement arena is something we will be focusing heavily on actually as we go into the next year, as this actually is a demand actually across every single profession that we support actually in. And actually, as a result of that, what we have done is invested in a post actually within HEIW, which is a head of placement experience and improvement. This role is going to be absolutely critical to support the delivery of this good education going forward. So I hope actually sort of members actually will have read this report, and I'm pleased to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, diolch, Lisa. Can I open it up to board members? Any questions or comments, please? Jill?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Lisa. That it's a great report and very, very positive and encouraging. So really pleased to receive it. What my question, I suppose, is one that I think I've raised previously in terms of the linkages with the IMTPs elsewhere and our workforce data, and it's something that we dwelt on at the audit committee in terms of the data input, and I just wondered, are we moving closer to joining all the dots in a way to make sure that the whole cycle is working much better and in sync?
Thank you, Jill. I mean, the answer to that is yes, we are. We're always improving our data, and I'm sure Julie actually can support in how we're actually doing that. But we are actually moving that process actually near to how we actually commission and plan going forward. And conversations have already been had actually at the executive committee as to how we align this plan to the IMT plans as well, and our planning process within the NHS too. So this is something we are continually working with. The data aspect is something that we rely on heavily in order to inform actually our commissions going forward. So we are sort of continually looking at improving that, and I've got colleagues actually across the table really that support actually us in delivering that. I don't know whether any of my colleagues actually want to come in.
Thanks, Lisa.
Tina?
Thanks, Lisa. I think it's worth commenting on the amount of work, I know you've said it, the amount of work that we've put into scrutinising the workforce plans of the Education and Quality Committee, and the comments that you've actually included in the paper about placements, and that we really are at maximum capacity with our commissions due to the numbers of placements. And one of the other areas of innovation that we've also taken on board is simulation, and that we have appointed some associate deans in simulation to enhance the student experience, but that doesn't still detract from the need for clinical placements to further the student experience. So given where we have been consulting with a number of our stakeholders, I think it is important to say that we are at maximum capacity in terms of the commissions that we can achieve. Obviously, going forward, it would be nice to look into some of the other areas, maybe in social care and in the independent sector. But given that, just really, I think it is important to note for the minutes just how involved the Education and Quality Committee have been in working with the team to scrutinise the work that's come forward. So I'm pleased to see the commissions that we've got being recommended to date. Thanks.
Thank you, Tina. And you do touch on sort of very important aspect that we're actually also exploring, which is about actually having multi-professional clinical placements as well. You're absolutely right, actually. The challenge to develop more clinical placements is upon us all, and this is well recognised within the service, our service colleagues as well. So it is about working with them, and I'm pleased that you mentioned social care as well, because there are real opportunities to think of different placements, not like the traditional ones that we do. But I think that I can honestly confirm there's an appetite out there to explore this in a different way, utilising simulation, as you actually mentioned, but work with others to explore actually how we can enrich that learner's experience and actually sort of involve them in actually in a variety of ways. It's really pleasing that HEIW was involved in developing clinical placement opportunities during COVID in the vaccination programs. That was very innovative, and that was about actually, sort of taking something that was happening there and then and actually adapting it actually to that education program in order to benefit the learner and obviously benefit the service itself. So it is an exciting opportunity. It is a challenge and it is a risk, but we are actually working together and working with Push as well. It is actually about trying to see how much of this could be done in a multi-professional way, which is really exciting.
Okay, I'll go to Push and I'll come to you, Ruth. So Push.
So thank you, Chair. I mean, what I was going to say is pretty much been said by Lisa there. This mirrors a discussion we were having yesterday at the North Wales Medical School stakeholder event, task and finish group. And one of the big issues that we need to address is placements across the whole of Wales. And instead of working against each other as health education institutions to compete, I think there needs to be more cooperation, because I think there's many opportunities to cooperate for not just between an individual profession like medicine, but also, as Lisa says, from a multi-professional arena as well, because I think it's really important that we train our professionals together in the future, because that's what breaks down their barriers and makes them work better in the long term. And just to say another word of support to the plan that Lisa has produced, there's obviously several areas that sit under my directorate, and they have all gone down the same path as Lisa has described, of looking at national requirements, needs of the NHS, and have put all of those factors into the projections of what we wish to have in the future. So just wanted to say that as well.
Thanks, Push. I'll come to you now, Ruth, and then Eifion.
Chair, I've got a short list of issues I was going to raise, but I think they've all been covered by others. Just to say that we did go through this, as Tina's mentioned, in some detail in Education Committee, and very much welcome it. It's very comprehensive. It's a very comprehensive piece of work, but also it's been a task to fit it to the workforce strategy and the various stakeholder inputs. So finessing this, I think, must have been a substantial task, and to say how welcome it is. So I won't add to the discussion, because I think the points I would have made have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Eifion?
Thank you, Chair. My point was just to actually draw colleagues' attention to the financial implications of this plan, whereby the resource requirement for next year would increase to 262 million. Colleagues will remember the plan that we put to them, the 5-year plan that we outlined at the end of last year for this period. And colleagues will have noted that the commissions have increased beyond that, which increases the requirement next year from 251 million to 262 million. That shows the growth that we're planning through this activity that we're expecting to commission for the years ahead. So I just wanted to draw colleagues' attention to the significant increase in resource requirements to deliver this plan. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Eifion. So Lisa, from my point of view, one of the charts, let me just get the page. We're showing the IMTP requirement. This is on page 5. The IMTP requirements against the numbers, the commissioning increase, and the expected availability. And particularly with the COVID impact on staff, I think the IMTP requirements, for me, consolidating that into a much more meaningful and accurate picture going forward will be very important. But I'm really pleased to see it there because it's in plain sight. And that comes to my other point in that as much as we are training people, we need people to do the training and to ensure the quality and the experience. So many of those people have been on the front line during the pandemic. And this could be joyful news in that they are all enthusiasts for training and mentoring and supporting students. But it would be really good to match this with the postgraduate training and education that we put in to support those people in more senior places to progress their own careers, and how we're going to build the trainers and the educators of the future. So I think there's a lot to go for the future, but this plan is a really great plan for this year. It's a big statement in that we're very committed to increasing the education and the training and the pipeline into health and social care. So, you know, the detail is great, but as with everything, the more you see, the more you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right, Chairman, and this is a component of the plan for 22-23. And as I referred to earlier, there is a wealth of other work going on in terms of the annual plan the HEIW is doing. And in that plan, it mentions a number of the aspects that you refer to in terms of how are we actually developing the leaders of the future, the educators of the future, but also it takes into account the challenge we have of recruiting, retaining and sustaining the workforce going forward as well, because you're right, COVID has impacted on everybody in a different way, and we have to take heed of the health and well-being of the workforce. And in doing that, you know, we are aware that people may be retiring sooner than they probably anticipated they would or planned to do, and therefore are there opportunities where we can utilise their skills in actually supporting the education and training going forward as well. And those aspects are being explored in a number of other sort of programs of work, which I'm pleased to say HEIW is actually involved in. It's a continuous pipeline all the way through.
Oh, so Ivion, your hand is up. Is that an old hand? Hen llaw.
Old hand, Chair, sorry.
Oh, right, okay. So are there any other comments or questions on this? The board has been asked to note the current position with regard to the 2022-23 education and training plan. So I'm asking you to note that, and I'm asking you to support submission of the plan to Welsh Government subject to feedback from the NHS Executive Board. So can I have your support for that, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And there will be a review process of the process to identify lessons learned for next year. And that will be reported to the board?
Yes, it can be, actually, Chair. We're actually obviously, this is in light of working with stakeholders. It's important that we listen to what their views are and understand the process that we undertook. And yes, we will. We'll take it to the Education Committee in the first instance, obviously.
So Ruth, I'll look forward to you bringing it back here to full board at some point. Okay, what's the time frame for that review?
We're hoping actually to set up a meeting actually by the end of August, but as you can imagine, it's about people's diaries and taking that well-earned actually annual leave, as you mentioned earlier. But we're embarking upon that quite quickly.
I'm just aware that you'll be building up on the 23-24 plan before very long.
Yes, yeah. and we've taken that into account, Chris. We have.
Okay. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
So, agenda item 3.2, pharmacy strategic outline case and associated business cases. Is this for you, Push.
It is. Thank you, Chair. It's virtually every meeting I go to, there is something about pharmacy coming up, and I think this will continue for some time. So the first part of this is a request for the full board to endorse the submission of the strategic outline case to Welsh Government, so that we can then engage with them to take this forward. You'll be aware that this has been developed by the Pharmacy Deanery. It's been scrutinised by our internal initial education training programme steering group. It's been to exec team. It's been to the Education Committee, Education Commissioning and Quality Committee, even though the document itself was submitted outside that meeting. And independent members will be aware that we had a full board briefing on this issue recently. So what the strategic outline case describes is our path and our journey to having a new programme which has independent prescribing at the end of the 4 undergraduate and 1 pre-registration year, which will be called the foundation year, so that we'll have independent prescribing pharmacists qualified immediately after registration. That's a big step from where we are at the moment, but as you can imagine, it doesn't happen very easily. It needs new undergraduate clinical placements. It needs a transformation of our current, already innovative pre-registration multi-sector year. And it needs a new postgraduate programme to bring those people who won't have the advantage of this full course between now and 2026, to bring them up to the same level as we expect people in 2026 to be. So the strategic outline case describes the steps in a phased approach to achieve this. I'm assuming that most people have read this, so I'm not going to go into detail of where we go, but we have an initial sequence of business cases between now and November 2023 that are described in the cover paper. And one of them is subject to the discussion straight after this, which is the repurposing of the existing budget for the pre-registration year. All of the others are sequenced, in the right way. We expect there to be several steps and reflections during this strategic outline case. The financials are by necessity estimates of where we think we'll be. But the whole idea of this strategic outline case is that it's a live document that we can utilize and adapt as needed, depending on where we go. We're going to have internal gateway reviews to see where we are at various stages, and we're going to manage this over in the thorough way the most thorough way we can over the next 5 years. But it is really important that we engage with Welsh Government over this. So I'll stop there on this paper, if that's okay, because it is very easy to go into this in great detail, but I'll be aware that people will be have seen this case already and may have questions.
Push, you mentioned the board briefing session. I thought that was a really great opportunity for the wider board to really get to understand this. And I know it was at the Ruth, it came to your committee. So can I take your comments first, Ruth?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I found the board briefing session that we had extremely helpful. We have again considered these papers in Education Committee in detail. The paper was actually circulated after the meeting, but on the basis of that and the board briefing, we were content to recommend this to the board. It is a complicated proposal in terms of the management of the change, and it will need a significant and close project management approach, which is described and is in hand. And I think it's important to notice that this is an outline case, and it will be followed, as Bush has said, by business cases. So this is in essence the first major milestone in an ongoing process. It does signal a very substantial proposal for a different way of offering training for pharmacy trainees, and in many ways it is an innovative approach and breaking new ground, and the experience of other parts of the UK in also moving forward in pharmacy will be an interesting one. And I've been glad that we benefited from, for example, our colleagues in Scotland who are also pursuing a similar route at the moment. So I'd just like to thank those who've been involved in bringing this to us, and we would give it from Education Committee our support and recommend it to the board.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Could I just come back and say that we work very, very closely with Scotland. They are ahead of the game in undergraduate clinical placements. We're ahead of them in the pre-registration foundation year. So we are comparing notes thoroughly. We have invited them to our next steering group so that we can learn from what they've achieved, and they can compare notes with us about what we've done with the multi-sector programme.
Push, just a perspective. This is going to require quite a sophisticated communication strategy, because when will the first group of people graduate under this?
2026.
26. So by 2026. The rest of the NHS needs to understand the new capabilities and possibilities of these new types of pharmacists. And as we all know, culture is a really difficult thing to change. And it would be very unfortunate if we put these students through all this training for them then not to be able to express that training in their clinical practice. So I welcome the fact that you've spoken earlier about multi-professional training, but I actually think that the system needs to be, we need to be starting the communication with the NHS system so that people better understand what they can expect. And that'll be particularly important for the ones that have just qualified, and we're going to be transforming what they're doing, and maybe that'll come earlier than 2026.
Yeah. Absolutely, Chris. I think the comms on this, you know, most people think that this isn't going to happen till 2026, but we want to try and be getting people ready before that. So the people who are coming out of the foundation year next year, you know, one of the things that we'll be discussing with you outside this meeting is planning a new program in the immediate post-foundation period to bring those individuals up to the same level. So we will have these people coming through much sooner than 2026 to independent prescribing. It may take longer than the 5 years. It may take 6 or 7. But the plan is for us to have the new type of pharmacist in the next 2 to 3 years. So yes, you're right. We do need to have a comms thing with all of our peer groups. We need to make sure that everybody's aware of what they have on their hands and what competencies and skills they have on their hands and available to them, and how best to utilize those skills. So the chief pharmacist groups and the chief pharmaceutical officer are fully engaged in this and are aware of this. But I think you're right, there is a challenge in making sure the multi-professional groups are aware of this.
So at some point, I'm sure John will do the same, I'd like to take this earlier rather than later into the chairs group.
Very happy to do that, Chris, very happy to do that.
And I also think that we need to be actually talking to system leaders now at all levels, particularly in primary care, because a lot of these people will end up, I believe, working in primary care and community settings where they would be hugely beneficial in a much more innovative way than they are being utilised at the moment.
So it's been to chief execs, but you're right. I think once this strategic outline case has been submitted to Welsh Government, the next steps will be to engage with the system leaders. And I think you're absolutely right. That's what we need to do.
Okay, Lisa?
You've articulated exactly actually what I was referring to earlier in terms of actually preparing service for a new way of working. That is exactly what my reference actually was in the previous paper. But I think actually Heidi actually has also actually made the point I wanted to do as well, is it's taken to system leaders, but it's also sharing how this change is going to impact on our current workforce. In other words, you know, sort of how is that going to be actually adopted actually by primary care? But of equal importance is actually we need to share this with the public, because we know the challenges in primary care sometimes of the public achieve's expectations is different to what we are planning. And pharmacy is probably an example where for some time actually the public actually tend to think that you have to go to a GP to have their medications reviewed, but really a pharmacist is actually very expert in doing that. But that has taken time for the public to understand that and for them to utilize that skill better. And the other thing actually really is about this is a really exciting sort of opportunity in terms of how we're upskilling the current workforce. And we are sort of, Push and I are actually looking at this on a multi-professional basis, because there are similarities coming out when we come to the post-reg standards for nursing that we can adopt here. So we are obviously going to learn from this and try to utilise it in other professional groups as well. So it is really innovative and exciting.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I think what we need to do is to endorse the initial education and training of pharmacists programme strategic outline case and its submission to Welsh Government. Can I ask your approval?
Yes, agreed.
Thank you very much. And now agenda item 3.3. Oh, Eifion, keep calm now. Repurposing funds. Repurposing of existing funds within pharmacy pre-registration and foundation business case for 21-22. Are you covering this, Push? You're on mute.
Yeah, that's me. So this is one the case I referred to in the previous paper. So basically, there's a number of issues that arose, which has the previous multi-sector program overlapping with what the needs are of the new program. And I think there's a number of issues that arose as a result of this. So if I take you back to the original program, there was due to be a phased introduction of the multi-sector program, so that by 2023, all of the new places would be, all the new pharmacy pre-registration places would be multi-sector, and that was to phase in those posts into the system with the agreement of the chief pharmacists, so that they could manage, learn, and develop those places. The new ITP demanded in the timescale that we bring that forward by a year, and in the same period of time, we discovered that that the funding that we had attached to the multi-sector program was probably not sufficient for the training needs of the providers. So a combination of those two things made us look at, and the third thing being that the number of applications for the pre-registration pharmacy program has been decreasing, and that is related to a national trend of decreased applications to pharmacy schools across the UK. Many schools have, and considered some of the top schools, have gone through clearing for the first time in the past couple of years. So there is a national trend in that. Don't know what the exact cause is, but it could be that we've expanded medical school places so much over the last few years. So that might have had an impact on pharmacy recruitment. In any case, the number of applications we've had is around 130, 125 to 130 for this year and next year. The funding that we had was for 160 places. What we realized is that we could use that funding in a different way to guarantee multi-sector placements next year in multiple sites across Wales. But we would have to limit the number of places to 130, which still is an increase from about 90 the previous year. So it's still a substantial increase of near to 50%. We took this proposal to executive team, and we have been to Welsh Government to talk to the Chief Pharmaceutical Officer, and we've had endorsement from the Chief Pharmaceutical Officer and our financial colleagues to repurpose these funds to essentially have 130 places for the next 3 years, or to guarantee having 130 places for the next 3 years, as opposed to what we had originally planned, which was 160. So the purpose of this paper is to bring to the board the information that that's what we were doing, because I thought it was important that the board was aware of this, and the reasons behind it, and the fact that this is to secure an earlier implementation of the multi-sector placements. So I'll stop there, and happy to take questions.
Okay. This has been to the Education Committee?
It has, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any comments or questions on this?
I've got my hand up, Chair.
Heidi?
Chair, I got my hand up as well.
Right. Okay, Heidi, then Jill. Sorry, Ruth, then Jill.
Oh, it was just to come back and say it certainly has been. I think that in the round, the settlement round 130 is very sensible. When you think that is already a substantial increase, the increase to 160 would have been, or not quite, but heading for doubling, maybe was unrealistic to start with. So that's my view. We also discussed at Education Committee and supported this proposal.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Jill?
Can I just say that the 130 is even at 130, we still had the highest rate of recruitment to pre-registration in the UK, even at that level. So just to point that out.
Okay. Jill?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I suppose it's slightly contrary to now what both Ruth and Push have said, I suppose. I was wondering, given the level of underspend that we've entertained in the last couple of years, whether there was any prospect of having the penny and the bun, as it were, so the additional monies, additional money from elsewhere transferred, and having the 160. So was there any opportunity for us to maintain the 160 and either have some of our underspends returned or additional monies from Welsh governments? But if the 160 was unrealistic, then that probably answers it. But I just wondered if we'd done that option.
So just to say that when we originally went for the 160, we actually had 155 applicants, but when COVID happened, many people withdrew. Okay. So I think COVID has certainly had an impact on this. I think this is also, to all intents and purposes, a live issue about clinical placement capacity in secondary care. We know we can get clinical placement capacity for secondary care in the multi-sector programme with 130. 160 is stretching the resource even further. So I think that was a really big constraining factor for us that that made us settle on 130.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Jill. Eifion, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In essence, this resets the programme and the numbers to a realistic position in terms of what we're able to recruit and also the capacity we've got to train those recruits. And in a sense, it's a much better and more sustainable package in that context. Should there be a position in the future whereby we are able to actually recruit more than 130, then clearly the option would be there for us to actually, do we then use additional resources to actually go there? But at the moment, this is by far the more realistic position that we've got, and I would recommend that we plan on this basis.
So the workforce requirements for pharmacists, if you use the old world, is one thing. And that's why I think this business of promulgating the new type of pharmacist that is going to come out of the education program is really important. The possibilities and the capabilities of the pharmacist as part of a clinical team will be different. So I think we do need to keep an eye on these numbers in terms of, have we got the right numbers going forward? But I think that it's very clear we should be supporting this. So I'm asking your support for this action, that we change the foundation training numbers from 160 to 130.
I support that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And this is a very topical subject coming up next, 3.4, the biodiversity and oh, Jill, your hand is up. Is that an old hand?
Yeah, I thought I'd put it down, sorry.
Oh, okay. Agenda item 3.4, biodiversity and decarbonisation strategy.
Thank you, Chair. Diolch, Cadeirydd. So I'm very pleased today to ask the board to approve our biodiversity and decarbonisation strategy that we've developed with the support of our staff and the rest of the executive team, which is founded in Welsh Government policy and the NHS Strategic Delivery Plan, and the supported documents is laid out in the strategy. It lays out 4 areas of action for HEIW, which is our proportionate contribution to the overall aim to reduce to carbon net zero by 2030. And those are engaging and supporting our staff, sustainable procurement, developing HEIW and supporting our local communities and environmental sustainability. In the plan, it refers to our new agile working model and how that links to the 30% ambition for remote working across Wales, and that is an ambition. It's clear, it's deliberately couched as not a target, but we're going above and beyond that, as Alex mentioned earlier, in our approach to agile working. Next steps will be to develop our own key performance indicators and a detailed action plan, and to reshape our delivery mechanisms, and we're working on those now. But obviously it is an area that we're all interested in. There's a lot of engagement with staff, and I'm very pleased, as I say, to recommend it to the board for approval today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this paper? Ruth?
Thank you, Chair. I alluded to this earlier, but I really welcome this paper, and I think it's an excellent start. It just illustrates it's quite a long way for us to go in terms of implementing it. Under our intentions, and note the proposal that we investigate opportunities to get involved in community projects in local areas, developing links with communities. And I just wondered how we thought this through and how we were proposing to do that. And if that is going to go ahead, I would be very interested in contributing or being part of that, if there was any way I could help. And also bearing in mind my previous involvement with NRW, with any work we were doing on biodiversity, I'm happy to make links if that's useful. And the other context for us is in commissioning and procurement. I was noting in actually the chairman's report earlier, reference to, I think it was your report, Chris, but earlier in this meeting, to procurement and the need for mandatory training. I just wondered whether mandatory training, not necessarily mandatory, but training should also be offered to independent members, particularly on the wider, more strategic aspects of procurement, including its link with sustainability. It's not just a question of the operational end of the process of procurement, but there are also significant strategic implications for us as a board. So with those few comments, I think this is a very helpful start. Thank you very much, Nicola.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Tina? You're on mute.
Sorry, I thought I'd taken it off. I'd echo the comments made by Ruth in relation to strategic training. There are numerous packages available looking at strategic agenda. I'm undergoing one myself at the moment, which I think might be beneficial to the whole of the organisation. And given we're training and educational health authority, maybe we should be looking at how we can contribute that type of training across the NHS as well. Thanks.
One of the fellows presented the nitrous oxide story, and I just think some of the methodologies that she used, maybe we should be supporting our clinical fellows particularly and our new leaders to really think about questioning some common practices, clinical practices going forward. But on a more practical end for us, Julie, what proportion of our staff have leased cars? Do we do this? Do we have a scheme that I know we have a scheme supporting bicycles, but we also have a scheme, NHS scheme for leasing vehicles, don't we?
Yes, we do, Chairman, and we have recently taken the decision to reduce the engine size of the cars that can be purchased through the lease scheme or arranged through the lease scheme, in line with a number of other NHS organisations.
Are we able to incentivise e-vehicles?
I don't think we are, no, but because we're operating within the terms of the schemes that apply across NHS Wales, but I'm happy to have a look at that. As I say, we have made significant changes in advance of quite a number of the other orgs to reduce engine size, so people can't buy, significant gas guzzling cars anymore.
Yeah,
through the lease arrangements.
I know that in some private companies they're now incentivising the purchase of e-vehicles, and because of the mileage that you can do on them, before it was very, very challenging. But the batteries are getting better, and it may be something that we would want to suggest to the NHS in general, might want to consider.
Yeah.
Not to prolong the conversation, but I believe just from people I know that have lease cars that the national NHS scheme does incentivise e-vehicles already.
It does.
Yeah.
Maybe if it does, maybe we should bring that to, we should make staff aware. Okay, so are there any other comments? Really useful paper. How is this going to be reported to the board? How is our progress going to be reported?
It's one of our objectives in the annual plan, so updates will be received through the performance reporting. As we develop KPIs, or if there's any areas of particular interest or things that change, we'll bring update reports to the board as required.
So we're developing KPIs on this, are we?
Yeah.
And that'll be part of the performance report?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So we're asking the board members to approve the new HEIW Biodiversity and Decarbonisation Strategy. So can I have your approval, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. Part 4, agenda item 4.1, Eifion, the finance report.
Thank you, Chair.
Amser Arian.
Yeah, Arian. Colleagues will have the monthly finance report within their pack. Briefly, in terms of going through the report, HEIW is reporting an underspend of some £215,000 as at the end of June. This is against the balanced plan that we have for the year. But in recognising that we have a balanced plan, there is an expectation that some £3 million of additional resource will be required to actually ensure that we actually do balance that plan. The assumption in terms of receiving that £3 million was reasonably assured, and we are expecting a response from Welsh Government very shortly on that issue. Turning to our position, colleagues can see that we are underspent about £162,000 in pay and £73,000 in non-pay. So in a sense, largely a continuation of what we've experienced in those areas from last year. I haven't got anything more to say on the revenue position other than we will be undertaking a deep dive at the end of the first quarter to get an in-depth understanding of what does that position signal for the year end. So I will be reporting that back to the board once that deep dive exercise is complete. The capital expenditure, we have a £100,000 allocation, and we have an order of £15,000 that's been raised to date, and we will keep the board appraised of the progress in that. And the only other item that I would then draw to the board's attention was that our public sector payment policy performance for the first quarter was 99.3%. Colleagues will remember that last year we had a dip in our performance, which took 8 or 9 months to recover, and we only just did that by the end of the year. But this year we've addressed that issue, and we've started the year off in a much better position. So, Chair, that was it in terms of my bringing out the highlights of the report.
Diolch yn fawr, Eifion. Are there any questions or comments for Eifion, please? Jill?
Thank you, Chair. Just one question, Eifion. Thanks for the report. It's very clear. The level of creditors continues to be incredibly high. Is there, I may have asked this before, is there a problem with the billing from the universities?
I wouldn't term it as billing, but in a sense it can vary from month to month in terms of receiving those invoices and the time that it takes to actually then process them. But we actually do process them, obviously, within the timescales that we have. We are working with the universities to improve the billing and the approval process, and I fully expect that to actually have some impact later in the year.
Okay, that was the question I was going to ask. Is there anything further that we need to do? Yeah. Can we bring it back as an item to show what's changed?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, we can do that. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Eifion? In that case, we've been asked to note the financial position as reported for month 3. We've been asked to note the summarised explanation of the key variations by directorate, the capital allocation, and the balance sheet position. Can I ask you to note those things, please?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. We're now going on to updating the standing financial instructions. Eifion.
Thank you, Chair. This item is to bring to the board's attention that the Welsh Assembly Government have issued new model standing financial instructions. As colleagues are aware, the standing financial instructions for the organisation is determined by Welsh Government, and we, as the NHS bodies, are required to adopt those SFIs. This item is to bring to the board's attention that new standing financial instructions have been issued by Welsh Government, but I would ask if we could change the recommendation that is there for the report, which is not, what I'm asking the board now is not for us to adopt these SFIs, because we have been in discussion with Welsh Government, identifying to them that HEIW do require some difference, sorry, some differences in our contracting arrangements because of our position as a Education Commissioner, and Welsh Government think that there is merit in that. So what I would ask the board is to actually note that these model SFIs have been issued, but that we are in discussion with Welsh Government for further amendments to these that would apply solely to HEIW, and I would bring those revised SFIs back to the board at a later time in the year.
So Eifion, there's a very interesting paragraph in the paper. It says, all HEIW board members and officers must be aware of these standing financial instructions and where appropriate should be familiar with their detailed content. So it says then about where it's all available, and it says the board secretary will be able to provide further advice and guidance on the wider governance arrangements within HEIW. Have we done an impact assessment of these changes on those instructions?
They have just been received relatively recently, Chair. We will be working through the set that we will agree with Welsh Government that will apply solely for HEIW.
Right.
Could bring that impact assessment back to the board when we have the final set. I think it would be premature to do these now.
Yeah.
We know that they are going to actually change to make them more applicable for us.
Okay, so can I ask David that we particularly note that, and that we make sure that board members, particularly independent board members, are able to do due diligence on that? Right, so I think making sure, particularly seeing that we'll be having new board members going forward, we need to make sure that people are in sync in terms of their understanding of these standing orders. All right. Okay. And we're not just a normal NHS body. We've got peculiarities in the way we do business, which Eifion's explained. Okay, so are there any other comments or questions for Eifion on this? In that case, I'm asking us, the board is asked to approve the adoption of the updated model standing financial instructions for HEIW.
But as I mentioned, Chair, I'm asking colleagues to adopt these. Which actually I'm changing the recommendation, is that we note that these have been issued by Welsh Government.
Right.
That there are discussions that are ongoing between us and Welsh Government to make these more applicable for HEIW.
Okay. So is everybody happy to move on that basis? We're changing the wording of this, so it's to note the adoption of the updated model standing orders and then reflect their implications at a later date for HEIW.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Happy, Chair.
Jill, can you keep an eye on us for that, please, through audit?
Yes, they went to the recent audit committee.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. And now I'm moving on to agenda item 4.4, hosting of the Office of Chief Digital Officer. David.
Chair, you've just, if I could take you back to item 4.3 relating to the standing orders, please.
Oh, sorry. Mind ddrwg gen I.
No, so no problem.
I was on purpose trying to change the order, but okay, we'll go to the updating standing orders.
Okay, diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, papur yn gofyn am gymeradwyaeth ar gyfer rheolau sefydlog diwygiedig AaGIC ydy hon. Felly mae'r cefndir yn debyg i'r papur blaenorol. O ran y cefndir, hoffwn dynnu sylw'r bwrdd at ddwy elfen o'r adroddiad. Yn gyntaf, cafodd rheolau sefydlog model ei diwygio a'i cyhoeddi'n gynharach eleni gan Llywodraeth Cymru. Gan hynny, mae rheolau sefydlog AaGIC wedi cael ei diweddaru i adlewyrchu'r newidiadau i'r rheolau sefydlog model. Mae'r newidiadau yn adlewyrchu newidiadau yn y gyfraith, newidiadau mewn teitlau swyddi ynghyd â newidiadau i cyfeiriadau safleoedd we. Ac mae'r ail elfen o'r diwygiadau yn ymwneud â diwygiadau lleol o ran terfynau ariannol dirprwyedig neu delegated financial limits. Mae copi o'r rheolau sefydlog sydd wedi diweddaru ynghlwm yn atodiad 1 ac mae yna wybodaeth cefndirol manwl ynglŷn â pob newid i'r rheolau sefydlog o fewn y blaen bapur. Mi ydyn ni wedi ymgymeryd proses impact assessment, un ysgafn sy'n adlewyrchu natur y newidiadau. Felly, dyn ni'n gofyn i'r bwrdd i adolygu a chymeradwyo'r newidiadau i'r rheolau sefydlog. Os gwelwch yn dda.
Okay, diolch yn fawr, David. So, are there any comments or questions on this, on adoption of these standing orders? In that case, I'm asking the board to review and approve the amended HEIW standing orders as in Appendix 1. Can I ask your approval, please?
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. 4.4, David?
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly papur gwybodaeth ydy hon yn rhoi diweddariad ar sefydlu swyddfa'r prif swyddog digidol. Hoffwn dynnu sylw'r bwrdd at 3 prif elfen o'r adroddiad. Yn gyntaf, swyddogaethau AaGIC. Deallwn fod cyfarwyddyd ar fi'n cael ei awdurdodi gan y gweinidog yn cadarnhau fod swyddfa'r prif swyddog digidol yn cael ei ychwanegu at swyddogaethau AaGIC yn y man. Ac da ni wedi cyfeirio bod y bwrdd yn cefnogi'r symudiad yna yn gynharach o ran cadarnhau y penderfyniad y Chair's Action yn gynharach. O ran yr ail elfen o'r adroddiad, y memorandum cyd-ddealltwriaeth neu MOU, rydym yn agos at gwblhau yr MOU. Mae'r blaen bapur yn manylu ar y risgiau sydd ynghlwm yn y prosiect yma ac yn mynd ymlaen i fanylu sut da ni'n mynd ati i liniaru y risgiau hynny. A da ni wedi bod yn llwyddiannus yn ein trafodaethau gyda'r Llywodraeth i sicrhau bod y camau i liniaru y risgiau ynghlwm yn y prosiect bod nhw'n cael eu cynnwys yn yr MOU. Ac i gloi, da ni wedi ffurfio tîm prosiect pwrpasol ar gyfer hostio'r prif swyddog digidol ynghyd â bwrdd prosiect rhaglen gyda Llywodraeth Cymru. Felly, da ni'n gofyn i'r aelodau i nodi'r diweddariad gwybodaeth. Os gwelwch yn dda.
Diolch, David. So, we are being asked to note the update for information on the hosting of the Chief Digital Officer. Can I ask you to note it, please?
Yeah.
Have we got
Yes.
any questions for David? No? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 4.5, Education Commission and Quality Committee Annual Report. Ruth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, the committee members will have, or board members will have been able to read the report, and don't want to go through it in any detail. It outlines some of the work, or it summarises the work that we've been engaged in over the past year. Clearly, this has been a year of the COVID experience, and like other parts of HEIW, we moved to online working, and that's worked really well. During the year, the committee has been strengthened, and that's helped greatly with the appointment of an alternate, with Jill on standby in case we've had any problems with quoracy, and in recent times that hasn't happened. We also have the capacity or to the capability of recruiting an additional member of the independent member of the committee since Kerry Phillips left to take another role. I think during the year we've tried to develop our focus on quality, and this is something that will be ongoing, and picking up some points from earlier discussions today, the multi-professional aspects of that and bringing that into a single place has been something that we've been concerned about. The issues of placements have increased in importance or relevance, and that will be ongoing too, as the annual plan that we discussed earlier is implemented, and not least as that's implemented. I don't think I want to particularly raise any other points from here, but maybe Tina could be given opportunity to flag anything that she thinks is important. So Tina, you want to add to that?
Just other than I think it's opportunistic for us to thank the members of staff who've actually contributed greatly to the success of the amount of work that we've had to scrutinise. So, you know, I think it's always good to say thanks to people, but in this particular year, it has been particularly challenging and very, very busy, and we've had some major work being undertaken, especially about the contracting stuff, which you've already alluded to. But as Vice Chair, I think it's important to thank everybody too, as you've done. Thanks.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think we said in the report that it would be difficult to overstate the depth of our appreciation for the efforts that the staff have put in. All the staff have contributed, including us, Bolton Secretarial, and people who've come intermittently to give us presentations. So I'll leave it at that, Chair, but I'm very happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any comments from other board members? Well, look, this annual report reflects an enormous wodge of work done on behalf of the board. It is, you know, it's a really interesting read, given the year that we've had. It would be interesting in any year, but particularly given the circumstances. So I've had the pleasure of popping along to the committee twice in the last year, and it's clear it's not exactly dull, is it? It's it is a really important role that you play. So thank you very much from me to the committee. We're asked to note this report, are we? To note the annual report. I think noting it is a bit of an understatement. Yeah, we note it, but I think we say thank you as well. All right, so thank you very much. Can I go now to the key issues report from the committee, please?
Thank you. Again, this is available to board members, and some of the issues that we discussed in our recent meeting, we've already alluded to earlier in this board meeting, so I won't go back over those. I'd just like to mention that we did receive some correspondence, a submission from the Royal College of Nursing in relation to the National Annual Education and Training Plan. We received that very shortly before the committee met, but we did bring it to the committee, and indeed some of the points which we were able to distill from that were very helpful, and we have responded subsequently to that communication from the RCN. So I think that is the only thing that I would like to highlight that hasn't already, in many senses, been raised in this meeting.
Okay. One of the things that was raised earlier was lessons learnt, and that, of course, will come through your.
Absolutely, I've made a note of that, Chair.
Yeah.
And, we will pick that up and bring it back. I wondered, in relation to the annual report, whether it might be helpful to put a tabulation of our recommendations to board during the year, so that it's a summary there that board can see on the particular issues that we've highlighted to board.
I think, and going forward, I think the annual quality statement, particularly, how the committee has worked in that area. Not just the decisions it's made, but the actions it's taken to assure the quality.
We'll make a note to do that. Certainly do it on a report by report basis, but on an annual basis, we'll do that too. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ruth. Any questions for Ruth? We've covered most of it, most of the big issue ticket items in earlier parts of today's agenda. Can I go then to the Audit and Assurance Committee, Jill, where you had that last week?
Yes, we did, Chair, and apologies, the timing didn't quite work to get the paper on today, so I'm sure that that can be circulated separately. So we had a very full agenda at the Audit Committee. We noted some really good progress on the Information Governance Toolkit, an area of attention for the Audit Committee for some time. And Sian came to give us a presentation on that, which was very well received. And we'll be keeping our eye on that as we go forward. And also internal audit had given us a substantial assurance rating on that, which is always good to get as well. So we also have taken great interest, obviously, in the procurement improvements, and that action plan came to the Audit Committee along with the compliance report, and we were reassured that there was now some good progress being made in terms of our improvements to procurement. So that was well received. Internal audit, 3 reports, 2 reasonable and 1 substantial. So still getting some good assurance from internal audit, which obviously as an audit committee, we always like to receive. And Audit Wales took us through the structured assessment, and I think most board members will have meetings now in the diary for phase 2, but we had a very good report from them, which I know we've seen at the board on the phase 1 of the structured assessment, the planning, which they thought was very, very good, and there were no recommendations, which again is a great clean sheet to receive. We noted that counter-fraud have got some sickness and resourcing issues, and we're going to keep a very close eye on that. We did receive an update, and obviously they're doing their best to cover some resourcing difficulties, but we'll be keeping a close eye on that in the future to make sure that that has the impetus that it needs, because we're still a relatively new organisation in terms of embedding sort of counter fraud within the culture. We took the SFIs, the standing orders, which have both been on there, and the delegated financial limits that I thought were coming to the board, but that's my mistake. So we took those for approval at the audit committee, reviewed the corporate risk assessment and the tracker, and had a discussion on MOUs and making sure that the committees have their respective roles in terms of memoranda of understanding. So it was a very full agenda, some real pleasing progress on a number of areas, and a couple where the audit committee will be keeping a watching brief. So that was all, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jill. We've got David.
Thanks for that update, Jill. Just one point of clarification with regards to the changes to the delegated financial limits. They were included in those amendments that we've just taken with regards to the standing orders.
Aha, okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's covered. Any questions for Jill? Again, I'm very grateful for the work that the audit committee is doing. And did you use the word substantial assurance?
Yes, I did, Chair. It's very rare. I don't think I ever gave one of those out.
Oh, I mean, Alex, that's an extra Mars bar. That is, you know, substantial is not something I would be easily giving. But there we go. Well done. You know, so that's an achievement. We've completed today's agenda. We're going to resolve to go into in committee under section 1 of the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960. I always like saying that one. Before we do, it is now 11:38, David. We're roughly 37 minutes ahead of schedule. Do people want to go straight into in committee now, or do they want to convene at 12:15?
We have a 5-minute comfort break, Chris.
Yeah, but do you want to go into the in committee bit earlier?
Yeah.
Yes.
Happy
Yes, happy to.
Yeah. Can I suggest then we go into in committee at 10:02? Yeah, we've got a 10-minute break now. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
You happy with that, Alex?
Yeah, somebody, I think, is it Rob's got a hand up? My two.
Yeah. Thank you,
Rob.
Alex. Just a reminder that the closed board meeting is taking place in Teams.
Yeah.
So you'll all need to leave this session, but it will stay running, and it will still be running. When you rejoin this session, it will still be open to the public.
So when we go into the AGM, the minute we log in, it's live. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. So we won't be able to have a nice, comforting conversation with the public excluded before we kick off in the AGM. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, so just be aware that members of the public may have already joined at the point that you rejoin this meeting. I'm going to pause recording during the break, but I'll restart it when you're ready to commence the AGM, Chair. So
what time are we due to be in the AGM?
That is at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Excellent. Yes. All right. So I'll see colleagues at 10 minutes to 12 in the in-committee session on Teams. Thanks, everybody. Well done.
Thank you.